So good morning, good afternoon. I'd like to kick off today's webinar by introducing our good partner sa.global today, who is going to talk about automating accounts payable from start to finish. On the call today, also hosting with me is Tina Rash, who's a solution architect at SKG, and Ainsley Keller, who's the Director of Business Development over at SKG as well. So without further ado, let me turn it over to both Ainsley and Tina to kick us off and walk us through today's agenda, as well as getting into the content as well. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Michael. This is Ainsley Keller. I manage our North American practice here at sa.global. I see some friendly faces on the line, so thanks for your time today. We are going to focus on showing you end-to-end AP automation. We're going to kick off with just a couple PowerPoint slides, and then Tina, our solution architect, will be jumping into demo, and then we'll leave some time at the end for any questions that you have as well, and leave our contact information up. Yeah, Brenda, I think you can flip to the next slide for me. Thank you. So there's a few things that we're going to show you so that you can fully automate your accounts payable start to finish. We're going to start with where your vendor invoices come into your system, and we're going to highlight a solution we recommend called ReadSoft Online. That's the OCR technology that our team here in North America uses for our customers. And then we're going to show you how a built-in application called XFlow can automate your invoice approvals. It can also match to your purchase orders. We're going to highlight a little bit of a newer solution. If you're not an existing customer and haven't seen the release notes on payment factory automation, we're going to highlight a little bit of that newest feature that we released just a year or two ago. And then lastly, now your invoices are approved and your vendors want to be paid. And so how do you get payment instructions to your bank securely and automatically in the exact format that the bank needs, and of course notify your vendors that you're sending them money. And some of the solution highlights that you're going to recognize today, again, if you're an existing customer of sa.global, you already know this, but the solutions that we're presenting, the Treasury Automation Suite and the XFlow solution, are completely built into D365. So if you're used to that system, you're going to be used to the TAS suite and XFlow. Both products are certified and preferred by Microsoft, and we are very proud of that standing. We see it as a responsibility to keep this code certified and compatible for the latest ERP release that Microsoft has out in the market. And the XFlow solution processes more than 30 million invoices around the world. So they have a very large customer base. And of course, we deploy the solution for the North American market here, but they process many, many, many invoices for their customers. We're going to show you a little bit of the enhanced workflow and the user-friendly system. What we're going to focus more on is how XFlow is used in D365, but it works seamlessly on your mobile devices as well. So your approvers that are traveling or working away from their desk can approve their invoices very seamlessly. And then, of course, we're going to show you how to get money to your vendors. We're going to do that in a secure way. That's kind of the finish process of start to finish. So we have a first polling question right off the bat. We'd like to know which of your organizations are using purchase orders. So if you have purchase orders today and you'd like AP automation to match your vendor invoices to POs, we'd like you to give us some response here in this poll. And I think that should be fairly simple to give us a yes or no if you use purchase orders today or are thinking about using purchase orders. We'll just give it a minute to let us know what you think, and then we'll close the poll here just in about half a minute, Brenda. Okay, thanks for your responses. I think we can close the poll now. I'm not sure that I see the results. How do I find that? I'd like to know what the numbers are.
Ansley, I'm sorry, but the poll seems to be acting a little strange. So I'm going to have to maybe ask the customers to just respond in the follow-up.
Yep, yeah, that's no problem. So we've got a lot to cover today in the presentation. For those organizations that are using POs, and it's a large part of the way that you do business, we're going to provide some follow-up content to you. We're going to have Tina focused on what we call cost invoices, or the general workflow for getting an invoice to an approver so that they can evaluate it and approve it, and help streamline the AP process. But for those of you who are heavy into purchase order use, we'll make sure to send some follow-up content to you. And of course, we can always provide a session for you if you'd like a private demo. For those of you who do not know who we are SK Global Software, and we're primarily an ISV that's focused on banking, treasury, and payment automation. We've been in business for about 25 years. And we are known throughout the world as the vendor of choice for Microsoft banking, treasury, and payment automation. Like I said before, our solutions are certified on the latest builds of D365. If you happen to be on the line and you're using AX 2012, most of the solution that you'll see here today is also compatible with the older on-premise version. And our solutions are listed in AppSource, and we have a really strong reputation in the channel. And we're also very grateful for our partners that socialize our brand throughout the channel, SA Global being one of our top partners. So we're really grateful to their time today. And this is our last slide. I'm actually going to hand it over to Tina Ash, and she's going to kind of walk through the high-level flow of AP automation and then jump right into demo.
Okay, so thank you, Ainsley. So this first slide on the left side, what we're talking about here is we're going to get invoices in some manner. Generally, you're going to get those emailed to you, or you're going to receive them paper invoices in-house. The invoice image will be captured and interpreted in the OCR, so that's going to be the ReadSoft Online that we're going to look at in a second. The invoice data will be sent as an XML, and the invoice is a PDF into XFlow and D365. It is fully integrated with the purchasing module, inventory and logistics, accounts payable, finance, project accounting, and fixed assets. So all those other submodules within D365 that you're using for invoicing, you can use in XFlow as well. If it is a purchase invoice and it matches all criteria and is within tolerances, it can go straight through to AP for payment processing through Treasury Automation Suite. Ainsley, do you want me to go over the payment side now, or are we coming back to those?
Yep, that sounds good. You can go through the payment side, and then we'll switch to your D365 environment.
Okay, so after the invoice is available for payment, now we run what is called Payment Factory Automation, which is automating those payment proposals that you have set up. So, almost every single customer that we work with has a payment run that they do weekly or bi-weekly, where they're just putting in that payment proposal and the same criteria pretty much week in and week out. So the Payment Factory Automation will automate that process for you, and it will create a payment journal. So the payment journal from there will create a file, and if you're using our communications hub, it will go directly to the bank as an SFTP, and your bank will be sending an inbound file back saying whether or not they accepted the payments. We will store, and those return files will be stored on the bank communications hub. So if you're familiar with this, in older versions, we call it File Hub. Now it's just been rebranded as Bank Communications Hub and has some additional functionality there. Once the return file has been matched to the outbound file, the payment journal will be accepted or rejected and posted. Your vendors will receive an email remittance that details the payments and the invoices that were paid, and then the payment journal will be auto-posted. Okay, so that is the full AP automation solution. Okay, so I think we're ready to go to the next slide. Or are we ready to go to the demo?
Yeah, let's go to demo. We'll ask this poll question. I'll interrupt you during your presentation and we'll do the second poll.
Okay. Hold on. I think I'm showing the wrong screen. Let's see. Screen and monitor too. Okay. Perfect. So hopefully now you guys can see ReadSoft Online.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, perfect. So this is ReadSoft Online. It is an automated tool. There is a template per country, which determines what information is needed for that country. So for example, in the US, a lot of times we're not requiring tax information, but a lot of other countries, VAT IDs are required to be able to process the invoice. The templates are easy to maintain, so you can have stuff added or removed. And what happens is each time an invoice comes into ReadSoft, it'll create a vendor template specific to that vendor. We'll call it a vendor fingerprint. And you do have the ability to determine if you want to capture an invoice header, which is what we're going to be doing today, or invoice header and lines. So the lines are going to be more for those stocked items on the purchase orders. Now, this is ReadSoft Online. We do not force ReadSoft Online. We do not force any particular OCR, but we do have a close relationship with ReadSoft Online, and we have a team that supports that. So if you want to use another OCR tool, you can. We'll just need to provide XFlow with the XML data and the PDF of the invoice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. For purposes of demo, I have broken the automation in my system. So what that means is every invoice I have is stopping in ReadSoft Online. Traditionally, once you have trained OCR, the only invoices you're going to be dealing with in ReadSoft Online are going to be new vendors, if your vendor changed their invoice template, or if you have a really bad scan. So you're only going to be dealing with those exceptions, not every invoice. So I have here, as I scroll down, you'll see where it's getting my information from. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so I can see a little bit more of the invoice image. Let's say it did not pick up my invoice number and I need to tell ReadSoft Online where to get that from. So I'll come over here and capture that information, and the next time an invoice comes in from Raven Supplies, it will know where to pick up that invoice number from. Okay, and my invoice date here, my PO, this one is a cost invoice, as Ainsley said, so we don't have a purchase order. A due date, this is one we could hide from here if we wanted to. Most of our customers do not capture the due date. They want the due date to be calculated based off the invoice date and the vendor terms within D365. So here's the phone number, the test field. So this one is just something I have added to my template to capture additional information. If we had tax, we would capture it here. My total amount due is right here. Delivery, we would not have this one on a cost invoice because this is related to those charge codes on your purchase orders. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And when I do that, it is going to change that to document export in progress and bring up my next invoice that I have to focus on. So now there is a batch job that is running in D365 to pull in that invoice from ReadSoft Online to D365. So I'll go ahead and switch to D365. So hopefully now you all can see that. Okay, so as Ainsley said in the beginning, XFlow is just another module within D365. So once I open up my modules workspace, you'll see XFlow here. Now again, for purposes of demo, I have broken the automation in my system. And right now, the piece I'm going to be showing you guys is what my AP invoicing clerks would be doing. Okay. So I could have went ahead and skipped this step based on the way my system's set up, but then we would just be looking at a posted invoice. So I've broken that automation. So under XFlow, my import from all. So these are going to be all of those invoices that came in from ReadSoft Online that I have to look at. Right now, like I said, everything's stopping here. But if I had my automation fully turned on, I would again only be dealing with my exceptions here. So I'm just going to filter by my username here. Okay, and here's my invoice. We do have XFlow does have a side-by-side view. So if I click view side-by-side, you will see my invoice image here. As I click through my other invoices, you'll see the invoice image that's being displayed has changed. Now, most of our customers actually choose to turn off this functionality, but they'll hide side by side, like I had when I first came to the screen. And instead, what they'll do is they'll show invoice, which will pull up an image of the invoice. And standard D365 has the ability to pop this out into a new window. So they'll just click on that. And if they have two monitors, they'll put this invoice image on one screen and D365 on another. And as they click through the other invoices or in D365, the invoice image that's being displayed has changed as well. So they'll have, the invoice on one side, the D365 screens on another, and just as they go down the list, the invoice image is changing as well. So if they need to validate anything from the invoice, they can. Okay, so mine here is Raven Supplies. I'm going to click Edit. Now, as Ainsley said, this is a cost invoice, which is just XFlow's term for invoices that do not go against a PO. So invoices that don't go against a PO, we still have to have a ledger account and dimensions to be able to post them, right? On purchase order invoices, it is deriving that from the PO. On cost accounts, it cannot derive them from a PO. So there's 4 ways those can be entered into D365 XFlow. So the first way I'll talk about is the way that I've done it today. So if you'll see down here, I have my ledger account and dimensions. I have used what is called a posting proposal in XFlow. So if I look at Raven Supplies here, I am saying 25% of the total invoice amount goes to this main account and this dimension combination. Now mine's pretty simple. I have 4 lines of 25% each. You can have it as granular as you want, meaning 2%, 1%, as long as at the end of the day your fixed weight total of all lines equals 100. You can even have it just 100%. So if you're always using the same main account and dimensions, you can set it to a fixed weight of 100%. The second way is standard D365 also has the concept of a default main account and dimensions on a vendor. So you could do the same thing using standard D365 as well. The third way you can get these in here is a user can manually key this in. So I say a user because right now I'm an accounts payable invoice clerk. If I use my drop down here, you'll see all of my main accounts. Some companies choose to have AP be the people that always code their invoices. Other companies say, well, why should AP be coding it? They're not responsible for the budget owners. The budget owners, meaning the approvers, should be the ones that are going to be populating this information. So I'll leave this one blank and we'll see what that's like as an approver. That is an XFlow security permission. So meaning, one of my customers, they have IT able to code the invoices to different departments, but they are not letting other departments do the same. So you can assign that role specific to users. The fourth way we can get it in, now this one is the one that I find that people use for shipping carriers or cell phone carriers where they pretty much know the main accounts and dimensions that are going to be used. It's going to be maybe 50 to 60 different combinations, but it's going to change the amounts being used are going to be changed each month. And in that case, what they'll do is XFlow has a import from file, and you can have a template in Excel and just import it in, and it'll break up those lines. Okay, so everything looks good here. I'm going to go ahead and post my invoice. And we will look at the vendor account once this is posted, because XFlow is using a standard D365 functionality called Invoice Register, and not a lot of people in the US are using this, so I just kind of want to show what that looks like. So we know the invoice is not approved. We just posted it, meaning it's going out to approval. And what happens is XFlow will send an email once a day. Actually, you set the reoccurrence of that email, but we generally recommend just once a day, and it'll have a list of all my invoices that I have to approve from today, as well as any invoices that I hadn't approved from prior days. So it's one email, includes everything, and it will have a link to the portal. So I can just click on that, and from my phone, my tablet, my computer, launch the approval portal. So we'll look at that in just a second. Going to go into the vendor account now. Okay, so here is my vendor, Raven Supplies. If I look at their transactions, and let me just see, invoice contains 625. So here's my invoice I processed today. It is not approved. This is a standard D365 field. It's normally right here. I've just pulled it to my list page. So right now, if I ran a payment proposal for this vendor, this invoice would not show up for payment because it's not approved. But if the vendor calls me and asks for where their payment is, or if it's already approved and I just want to see that invoice, at any time I can come up here and say XFlow, show invoice, which is just going to show me an image of the invoice, or documents, which could show me an image of the invoice as well if I have side by side on, where I could click show invoice up at the top, but it's going to show me where it is in the approval chain. So right now, it's only going to me for approval, so T-Ash is the current. If Ainsley had to approve it after me, it would say T-Ash current A Keller. If I had already approved it, it would say T-Ash approved A Keller current. So at any point in time, I can see the entire approval chain and not just who is with currently. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and approve that. Now we can approve within D365. There is a workspace for that. It looks exactly the same pretty much, or works exactly the same as the portal, but I am actually going to approve in the portal today. We find that most of our people that are not day-to-day users of D365 are approving in the portal. And in fact, I think there was a recent survey done that showed that 30% of people are approving on their phones or their tablets. Okay, so my invoice is down here at the bottom. If I would just start at the top, after I approved one or rejected it, it would open the next one. I'm going to leave all those out there and just approve my one invoice down here at the bottom. Okay, so we have my header section here, my lines right below that, and my invoice image over to the right. If you are approving on a phone or a tablet, it looks the same, except for your invoice image, instead of on the right, is going to be right below the lines, and you will be able to zoom in or out. Now this is the one I said that I didn't code the one ledger account. I had removed that. So if I use my drop down here, those of you who were paying closer attention notice that I had balance sheet accounts available as an AP person to code to. Well, now that I am an approver, I have limited the main accounts I can see. So I don't have as many accounts, so I can't select something that I shouldn't be able to. So I'll go ahead and select office supplies. Same thing with departments. We'll see here, this one's Department 31. If I scroll down and try to choose my department in just a second. My machine's a little slow. Maybe I'll just type it in. I wouldn't be able to see that one. Sorry, we don't have a lot of time today to get through all this, so I just want to go ahead and do this while my machine is a little bit lagging behind today. So here I have the option to approve my invoice. XFlow approvals are by line, meaning that each one of these lines could theoretically go to a different approver. So if you're doing your approvals based off department owner, for example, we would have 3 different approvers on this, right? So I could do here, I could approve it. This would approve all lines that are assigned to me. If I wanted to approve individual ones, I could come over here and do that. I could reject the invoice, put it on hold, forward to somebody else, save or validate, which is going to validate the account structure. Now, we can search by invoices I approved at any time, and I'll just explain this now because we don't have a lot of time to get through everything. So I just want to explain this. If you guys have more questions later, as Ainsley said, we could do follow-ups for sure. So right here, it has the last payment date. Since I'm just now, sorry. Is there a question? There's a little bit of feedback. Okay. This last payment here is the date if the invoice had been paid. Now I'm just approving this one, so it's obviously not paid, but I can always search my invoices I have approved in the past, and if it had been paid, I'd be able to see that payment date. If it's paid in full, my remaining amount, not all of those, just the remaining amount, the bottom one, would say 0. So I would know that it was paid in full, and it'd have a payment date here. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this. And then there is a batch job that is going to run within D365 that is going to post that cost invoice. So for my purposes on the invoice we looked at today, I broke all the automation, but really if I would have had my automation going fully, the only piece that a user would have had to touch would be to actually approve that invoice. Okay. And there are some accruals that we can talk about. I'll just talk about at a high level because we don't have time to show it today. But those cost invoices that you have that aren't approved and you have to close your month, you need to accrue for those costs in the month in which you incurred them and reverse them the next month. So XFlow does have a job that will assist with that accrual process and create an unposted general journal that you'll be able to modify and make changes to. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and look at the next one on our list, which is the payment factory automation. Ainsley, did you want to do the slide now or after payment factory?
Yeah, I think this is the perfect time to do the poll.
Okay.
Okay, so we'd like to know just a little bit about your banking footprint. Of course, our solution is a global tool, but we have organizations that are based in the US and using primarily domestic banking relationships, paying vendors via an ACH or a domestic wire. We've got some other organizations that have expanded into Canada and are primarily North American. And then, of course, we have organizations that really consider themselves multinational. They bank all over the world. They pay vendors all over the world. And so we'd just like you to let us know a little bit about your organization as we jump into getting payments out of your ERP system in the most seamless, automated way possible. So if you can just take about 10, 15 seconds and let us know what your banking footprint looks like, then this will be good information for us as we put together our webinar content in the future and how Tina presents it to you today. Okay, Brenda, I think we've given folks enough time. All right, a good split. There we go. So Tina, that gives you some information. We've got some international bankers on the line today, and we've got some domestic ones as well. So it's a good mix.
Okay, perfect. So the first thing we're going to start with is payment factory automation. And we talked about this a little bit when we were looking at the slides. But to do this, we're going to go into Treasury Automation Suite. So this is another module. You'll see here, it looks exactly like the rest of them, just its own module here. And we're going to do what is called a calendar generator. So payment factory automation, what it is really is most businesses have payments that they issue, once a week, twice a week, every other week or something like that. They set them at a frequency and they have to go into that payment journal, create the payment proposal, and then modify the payment journal. What this does is it automates that payment proposal creation for you. So it'll go ahead and do the payment proposal, create the journal, and then when you come in, let's say you're doing payments every Thursday, you come in on that Thursday, and now you'll be able to make any changes you need to, and then go ahead and pay those vendors. It does work both with Treasury Automation Suite AP EFT payments, as well as if you are doing any, in-house checks or any other methods of payment. So it'll work. It doesn't have to just be used in AP EFT payments. So what I'm going to do here is called a calendar generator. And this is the payment company. So for me, I'm going to pay out of the SKG payment company and use this journal name. My start date, most of our customers, what they'll do here is they'll put the full year. So it'll be 1/1 to 12/31. So they'll have it done throughout the year. I'm going to go ahead and say starting today, and I'm going to end it on 9/30. The days of the week, what days am I going to be issuing payments? So if just Thursdays, I could select here. If you had multiple days, you would select Tuesday, Thursday, like that. The earliest time, this one, we only have one customer, I think, that is using this, but they are running checks daily, twice a day. So they're paying check runs twice a day, so they have to have two separate payment proposals, once in the morning and once in the afternoon to be able to accommodate that. Low priority, this is just if I choose my records to include, and let's say I'm doing ACH journals separate from wires and checks, and I know my wire deadline is 2, maybe I want my wires to be my first priority, but my ACH is my second and my checks third. So it's optional. You can put it in there if you want or not. My description, this is just going to be the description of the payment calendar. So I'm going to say Tuesday, Thursday pay run. You could say ACHs or checks. The pay group here, this one, if I don't put anything here and I have 2 payment proposals today, it would consolidate them into one payment journal. So if I have an ACH payment proposal and a wire, it would combine them, which is generally fine. But if for your business you want to keep them split, you could put a pay group in here. So I'm going to say, you look, and everything else here looks very similar to what you guys are probably used to seeing with standard. Due date at cash discount or due date cash discount. The from date, that's generally left blank. Now the to dates, this is generally where you would put in a day. So if I wanted to include payments through Friday, I would normally put in 6/26. So mine, I'm not actually putting in a day, but let's say I want to include payments through Friday and I'm running this on a Thursday. I'm going to say 1, so plus 1 day. My total payment date, what day will my payments be posted? So this is that posting date in the GL. I'll go ahead and say 1. If you have centralized payments, you can separate by legal entity as well here. My records to include, this one is kind of important. I'm going to click filter. So this is if you are filtering by methods of payment, ACH check, or vendor groups, any of that. But also in this one is our company range. So which companies am I including? So for me, I'm only including my SK Global and my SK Global retail companies. So I'm not including everything else. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And when I do that, I'll go ahead and click OK again. And it will create what we would call out here our scheduler, right? So it's our payment calendar scheduler. Now let's say next week we know is a holiday, right? I think it's next week, it might be the week after, but we know 7/3 is a holiday. So we won't be issuing any payments on 7/3. I don't have a 7/3 date here, but let's say I know the 7/2 is going to be really busy. We're not going to do it there. Let's go ahead and do it on the 1st. But we want to go ahead and include payments, since we're issuing it a little bit earlier, up to the 6th. And we're going to change our payment date to the 6th as well. So once I have this developed, I can look at my company holiday list. And if the bank has holidays that I need to incorporate in it as well, or, let's say our company, for whatever reason, one of our customers had a company long retreat one week, and so they were all closed. They weren't issuing payments. So they build all this out at the beginning of the year, and then there is a batch job that is going to run that will pick this up. So actually don't know that I have anything out there. Let's see. So once the batch job runs, what's going to happen is in accounts payable, you are going to have a vendor payment journal. And I will go ahead and run that batch job so we can see one. Okay, so I'm going to run this batch job in the background. And meanwhile, we are going to go ahead and start looking at AP EFT Plus. So hopefully we'll have some things to pay out there in a little bit. So AP EFT Plus, as Ainsley said, we do have a lot of countries that we work with and a lot of banks that we have formats for. If I just come over here to my file formats in AP EFT Plus, we have hundreds of them out here, and we are developing additional formats all the time. We do develop formats for free, so if your bank has one that they're using that we don't have, we could develop it. So let me look at, I think this one we have quite a lot in for Citi. So if we look at Citibank, for example, you'll see we have a lot and then lot by country. So if we look here, the AE is going to be the country that follows it. So we have a lot of different formats out there in our library. banks formatting, bank formats in any country, I think, are not really standardized. So we'll have a lot of things out there. So look at this one, this XML one. If we have an inbound file, meaning the bank is going to send us back a file telling us whether or not the payments were accepted, we would link it here. And this effective date method is important for this is going to be the date the file is created. So normally what we recommend is effective date. If your bank is sending those back in a lump sum, you can set the effective date and it'll kind of force them from splitting up payments. So if you notice your bank is, when you send out ACHs, you send out $100,000 today, 25,000 is clearing tomorrow and 75 the next day. This effective date is probably what is happening there. Okay. We also have what we call field validation rules. So if I look at my payment specifications here, you'll see I have these field validation rules. And what these are, or the reason these were created is we found customers were creating files. They were sent to the bank and they were rejected because of missing information. So let's say on this one, this ACH, I was, not that I should be, but I was missing a routing number for that vendor. So I can come over here and say that routing number is required, yes. But additionally, I can also say the link validation. So I know in the US, my link validation for routing numbers is 9 digits. So I can say if there's a routing number in our system, let's say somebody, you see it sometimes with data migrations, leading zeros are dropped. You can go ahead and say, don't create the file if that routing number is not 9 digits and if it's not in the file. So what this would do is it would force the file to stop. A user would have to correct the data and then go ahead and send the file. Now the XML formats, we as consultants generally like the XML formats. The reason is because they have multiple different types of payment methods. So if we look at this one, we can send ACHs, we can send book transfers, bank printed checks, as well as probably some wires down here at the bottom, foreign currency wires. So there's a lot of different formats that are supported, or a lot of different payment types that are supported. And from a user perspective, what that means is we can have just one format with the bank. So it's one format to test, one format, you can combine all those payments into one file at the bank. So most banks charge by files that you send. This would allow you to consolidate all of those types of payments into one. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and do our payment proposal, or payment journal. We'll actually do a proposal. Didn't have anything picked up, so must have not met any of my criteria in my system. But if I look out here, the way I can tell if my payment factory picks one up is it'll be here as mark accept payment proposal or accept payment request. So these are the ones that the system's creating for me based off my payment factory automation. So I think just because I read it today, I must not have had anything out there that met my criteria. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a manual payment. Normally you would do a payment proposal or use payment factory automation, but occasionally you'll probably have to do a one-off. I can spell. Okay, so here is my invoice. It has my bank, everything's there. Now the one thing I want to show you guys as it relates to XFlow is here I'll be able to show the invoice. Let's say this vendor has multiple remittance addresses. I'll be able to see and validate that I am sending this to the correct one just by pulling up an image of the invoice. Or if somebody's going to be approving these payments and they want to know why I'm paying Ravens $13,000, they can see the document form here, which would show them not just the image of the invoice, but also any approvals, the approvals that were done and any notes that were done. Okay, but to pay this, I'm going to go ahead and click Validate first, APEFT Plus, and these are going to run those validation rules we were talking about. Okay, so I do have an exception. So to see that, I'm going to come up here to exception list. Oh boy. And that is not really what I was expecting. Sorry, we just recently put a new build in here, so I think it may have broken this. Let me try and see if I can do this in another company. Yeah, so no, I don't think they have anything else. Sorry guys, I got a new build just last night and I think it just kind of broke this, but let's see if I can, normally when I see errors here, I would expect on my exception list for it to tell me exactly what those errors are for. We'll go ahead and continue on. We might have to talk more theoretical if my system does not do these next two pieces. We'll find out in just a second. So with the creating the file, there's two ways you can create it. We will talk about one and try to do the other, and maybe you have to talk about it as well. But the first one is change APEFT state and send file now. Now, if you have an approval journal or workflows on your journals, you have to choose one of these. So the approval workflow or the journal can take this action for you. So you'll have to choose which one you want. But if you're doing like I have right now with no workflow, you can make this decision. So the change state and send file now, that's exactly what it sounds like. It's going to create the file immediately. And if I have my communication set up with a bank to send the file as soon as it's created, it would send that to the bank as soon as the file is created. So that one's the change APEFT state, send file now. That would be one payment journal equals one file. Okay, so the advantage of that one is obviously it's the best automation. The second one, change APEF state and send file later. Oh, there it is. I thought they both said now for a second. What this one would do is it would send it over to Treasury Automation Suite. And if I had any more journals that day that went against the same format, it would allow me to create them all into one file. So there's two advantages of that. I can obviously have multiple payment journals that I have broken up for whatever reason. And at the end of the day, just that one file being sent to the bank. So the other advantage is sometimes a treasurer or somebody like that wants to control the release of the files, but AP is doing the processing up until that point. So AP will do everything to this point, and then the treasurer at the end of the day will go release that file. Okay, so we're going to try this. I don't know that it's going to work since I have an error message. Yeah. So we'll talk about what really should be happening now is in Treasury Automation Suite under Create and Send. We would have a new record out here, and we would be able to come select that and begin processing. Now, I don't actually have anything to process because I don't have any payments here. But if I did, it would begin processing. And what that is going to do is it is going to send the file to the bank. So my outbound file status will be transmitted. Now, if your bank is sending back an inbound file, we would use that inbound file, a machine readable, I should say, inbound file. We would use that inbound file to update the status on each of the lines, whether it was accepted or rejected. And if it was approved, the payment bank has accepted it, we'd be changing the line in that payment journal to approved. If it was rejected, we would change it to rejected. So those payments that your bank rejects immediately, none of those would go out for, none of those would be posted in your system, and your vendors would not receive an email saying that the payment was sent to them that day. So when that inbound file comes in, a couple of things happen. One, we're updating those lines to accepted or rejected. Two, we're going to change this file status to completed. And as we're doing that, we're going to post that payment journal. And the third thing that's going to happen is those emails are going to go out to your vendors. So if you guys saw or remember the slide that we showed you with the overall process, with the happy vendors, that's kind of how it all works. Now, if your vendors reject that payment, or if the bank rejects that payment, not your vendor, if the bank rejects that payment, if they're sending back an inbound file, you'd be able to see the details of why it was rejected there, and hopefully, be able to correct that. So most of you may know when the bank sends back that initial validation, they're only checking certain things: the file format, the vendor name, the routing number. So sometimes they will still have rejections. But what happens is generally, if the bank accepts it, it clears your bank today, and maybe in 2 days it's going to be rejected. Now, In the case that it's rejected, let's see, of course I have all kinds of issues in my system today. In the case that it is rejected, we do have the ability to reverse that posted payment. It is only available if the journal has been posted, so the journal has to be posted, and if you've reversed it once before, you will not be able to reverse it again. So that's why I can't reverse this one, because I already reversed it. But that will take it and mimic kind of that check process, if you guys are familiar with that, the reversing of the checks. So instead of having to do the standard payment journal and I think it's a 2 or 3 step process to be able to reverse an electronic payment, you can just click here, reverse posted payment, and that will reverse for you. Okay.
Thanks, Ainsley. Yeah, so it doesn't look like we have many questions in the chat, but we are certainly, this is recorded, Mike, and we, as always, we send out you know, the decks and also the recording to everybody, typically within, you know, 3 to 5 days after the webinar. So we will publish this and send it out to everybody that attended, but also everybody that registered. So you have it. I do want to, you know, thank, you know, SK for joining us today and presenting this solution. We know a lot of our customers use parts of the Treasury suite, so we felt it would be very beneficial to see the full end-to-end solution and how companies are leveraging, you know, that today. So again, thank you very much for your participation today. And you know, if there are any questions, you certainly can reach out to any of us account managers at SA Global, and certainly, you know, a lot of you have relationships with SK as well. So we work as a collaborative team together. So we really appreciate everybody's time today. And since there aren't any other questions, we will close this out and thank you. And then there will be a couple of survey questions at the end of this. We really would appreciate if you could take an extra minute or two just to answer them, and it'll give us some additional feedback from the presentation today and any follow-ups that we have to do. So I wish everybody a good rest of your day today, and we hope to be talking to you soon. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.